Hello everyone, Teresa here. I just want to say hello to my new subbies and thank you for subscribing to me. If you can't make sense of this video, perhaps you could go back and look at some of the old videos to see what the references are, particularly if you can look at introduction. Let me see what it is. Introduction to Slow Stitch and Mindfulness. Now today this is not like the usual video that I put out. I'm afraid I've had to do a voiceover because I had technical problems, so that is one thing. Another thing, this is a very short video. It's only about half an hour, and that is really due to the lockdown. It's something I wanted to get out quickly to help those of you and me with the social isolation. So I do hope that you're all keeping well at this dreadful time, and I hope that you enjoy this video. As I say, it's very short. It was made very quickly, so good luck, and I'll carry on now. Hello everyone, Teresa back. I hope you're all well. I'm just going to run through quickly what we're going to be doing today. Now this is a bit of a funny shape because it was actually displayed on a wall this way. We're going to be using French knots on a leaf design. These are actually beech leaves which I drew round and then transferred onto the satin. If I hold it up, you can see possibly they're running stitches and back stitch combined with the French knots. Now I'm going to pull this back so you can see it's actually quilting. This is wadding and it's sandwiched between the front, the satin and the back. Now the design, as I just said, came from beech leaves which I drew and then made this paper cutting from. I did each leaf, spaced each leaf, so I did exaggerate a little bit. This piece is the inside part here of the drawing, and I use this for something else. But each leaf will be worked differently. I don't want any leaves exactly the same. So this is what we'll be basing today's lesson on, and I hope you enjoy it. So sit tight. So here's some ivy that I brought over from the local park, which is actually at the back of my flat. I went over there and it looks as if there'd been some sort of tree massacre where all the trees have been felled. Well, not all of them, but some of the trees have been felled, and all the ivy was on the floor, and it was quite sad. And I thought, oh, well, I might as well make the most of some of this, so I brought it home. Ivy is lovely for designing because of the shapes of the leaves, lovely heart shapes, and you get a nice variation of size. There's the large leaf there against the smaller ones, and don't forget our design principles of contrast, large against small, and ivy is just perfect for that. If you look at these, you can see just at a glance the difference in sizes from the large leaf to the tiny, the very, very small leaf there. This is the piece we'll be using. So first things first, it needs to be steadied on the paper. Now I'm using washi tape, but those of you who use washi tape, especially journalers like I am as well, washi tape, you'll know that washi tape doesn't stick, so I normally use glue on the back of it, but not in this instance because we're actually sketching or tracing, and the intention isn't to permanently stick it down. So with a nice sharp pencil, literally draw around the shape of your ivy. You might not be using ivy, you might decide to use something else, another plant. But as I say, ivy is very good. Oh, the beech leaves as well. You might have something local to you that you think, oh no, my local plant's prettier than the ivy. But I just have this love affair with ivy anyway. because of all the design principles that's involved. Naturally, they're just there. So round we go. And now don't worry too much. You're not trying to be Leonardo da Vinci at this stage, or any stage probably. So just don't worry. Some people have real problems about committing their pencil marks to plain paper. So don't do that. You're the artist. You're making your rules. And here we go. See, look, it's not exact. Mine isn't exact. So now just fill in what you're missing, as I'm doing here. So it will just carry on there. Just use the natural form for reference. What you do want to do though is get the shapes of the leaves, the lovely shapes. They don't have to be exact, but get the basic shape as much as you can, because you do need that. Now that negative shape there that I just scribbled on is the negative shape. Now there's obviously a leaf missing, and I'm just popping that back. So this one's a lovely big leaf. Look at that. So pop that in. That's it. And that end one's a bit curly, so it will be a funny shape. Back to the leaf, the natural for reference. Then with a black felt tip, you could use a biro, felt tip, whatever you've got. Just go around it and give your sketch some definition. That's all I'm doing there, is giving it some definition and exaggerating the shape so I can see it, because we do need a definite shape. The pencil markings there, they just wouldn't be sufficient enough for the design. That's it. So round we go, round that crinkly weird shaped leaf, which I'm keeping like that. I'm not changing that. And then round, I'm not sure that's twine, vine, stalk, stem. I'm not sure what that's called. So there we have it. And it's as good as match as any. And that is the natural form into the sketch. See how easy that was? No problem at all. Right, now this paper is just bog standard paper, parchment paper that you put in the bottom of your cake tins. It's on a roll, so it is a bit curly. So if you've got some and it's curly, just bend it back. Bend it back a bit, and then with the washi tape, which as I said isn't very good unless you have glue on the back, but please don't use sellotape if at all possible, because for obvious reasons, as you pull the sellotape off, you might pull a hole in your design or your sketch. So there we go. And this is such a nice thing to do, just tracing. Well, it takes you back to primary school, just sitting there tracing. How lovely is that? especially today's, what's going on outside in the world. It's just nice to have a little bit of escapism for an hour or so. So do try to enjoy it. There we go. And don't forget, you can exaggerate and eliminate. These are two more design terms. You can exaggerate the shape of your leaves. You can take some away by eliminating. Whatever you want to do, you might want to add some more leaves there, which would be exaggerating. Or you might want to take some away, eliminate. It's up to you. So just roughly take some of that surplus paper away. You can hear my clock again. At the moment, with the social isolation, that's the only company I have, which is very sad, isn't it? Right, so I'm out of screen now, screenshot there. It's a bit strange doing a voiceover instead of doing this at the same time as filming. I'm not sure, I don't like working this way, but I had no option this time. But I don't intend to make a habit of this. It's very, very awkward. So there we have it. So we have now gone from natural form to the sketch, or the tracing, the drawing, whatever you want to call that, to our design. Now this is going to be our design. So 3 stages from natural form to design. Right, the front piece of fabric is like a heavy satin. I'm actually going to use the front of the fabric today. Normally I use the back because I mostly prefer the back. I've got 3 pieces of fabric here. They each measure 8 inches by 9 inches. So I'm going to place the foam of the polyester wadding on the back of the front, the red piece, which is the front. I'm going to make a sandwich, and the same size calico on top of the polyester wadding. Now this is going to be quilted slow stitch. I don't think I mentioned that before. So I'm going to put the 3 together now, attach them so they don't move while I'm working on them, and just put some pins all the way around the edge, a couple of pins in each side, maybe 2 or 3 all the way around. And I always like the heads pointing in, mostly that I think that's a dressmaking thing, so because of this machine needle going over them. It's easier than having the heads pointing out, but it's also easier when you're hand sewing as well, because there's less chance of your fingers pricking them. Having said that, look, I've got a couple there pointing the way that I don't like. So that is nice and flat. Now the next thing, and I do advise this, no matter how skilled you are, I will always tack when I'm quilting with 3 layers. I'll always tack all the way around the edge. Now the tacking, some of you, especially my American friends, will call it basting, but in the UK we tend to call it tacking. Tacking great big long stitches. You don't have to be too neat or particular about these at all, because we will be pulling them out eventually. So all the way around the edge, over the pins, and then I've got a nice long piece there. I mean, they do say don't have your thread too long because it does tend to knot, and I wouldn't have my embroidery thread or floss too long for that reason. Now when you're using wadding, sometimes it frays, or not so much fray, that's the wrong word, but it starts to split. So if it does that, you might find you need to over sew very roughly, and over sew it like this, under and over, nice big stitches, and it stops the wadding from splitting or fraying, stops it from hanging out, makes it easier to work with. And that's just how to do the over sewing. I hope you can see it there. Right, there it is, big stitches. And as I say, don't worry about being neat, because that really doesn't matter when you're tacking. And the main thing is to go through the three fabrics, make sure that they're held tightly, because you definitely need them. You don't want them slipping about when you're working. And because I tend to use quite a lot of satins or shiny fabrics, slippery fabrics, it always pays particularly to tack then, to stop them moving. See, that doesn't take long, and it just makes it so much easier to work with. Just cut that off. Remove the pins. Lovely. Don't need those anymore. The two that, no, it wasn't, yeah, the two I put in the wrong way after saying, oh, I prefer putting them in the other way. That's what I get for showing off, isn't it? That's it. Smooth it out. Lovely. Smooth the back. Make sure those creases are right. Actually, I should have ironed that first, I think. It's not going to make much effect or have any effect, in fact. But for those of you who are more particular, you might want to iron that. And then with your nice sharp scissors, just trim off any wadding that's sticking out, because that can be really annoying. Now we need to find the center of this, and we do that very easily, straight across from one corner to the next, and you do it on the other side as well, and that way where the two lines cross is the center. For the design, we're going to do exactly the same. Just fold that in half as much as you can, find the middle, and where it crosses we're going to call the middle, and just match that up with the middle that you've just made in the center of the fabric. There you go. Now that should be pretty even. A few pins just to steady it, because the next bit, if you haven't done what we're about to do anymore, if you haven't done what we're about to do now, it's going to be a bit of a revelation for you, I think, because it was for me. Very first time I did this, oh, it was at school. Oh my goodness, years and years ago now. I couldn't believe what I was doing. So, and you do need some pins in this to hold it down tightly. Thread your needle, a nice strong thread, but not two thread, not like a thick buttonhole thread, a sewing thread, nice knot in the back or in the end, and you're actually going to sew through the design, straight through the paper, straight through the 3 lots of material. Now do this all the way round. There are other ways of doing this. If you have carbon paper, you could do it that way. You could cut out each leaf and put them back together like a jigsaw puzzle, or you could do something that's called prick and pounce with chalk. But I find this method for what we're actually doing now is the best. So this will be done all the way around the design. I'm going to carry on doing this off camera. You don't need to watch me do the whole thing now. There, good start. That will go all the way around each leaf now. So as you can see, I've almost finished. I thought I'd just finish off the last little piece on the camera so you could see now what happens right at the end. So this is the last leaf, just finishing it off. Bring the needle through to the back and knot it. Now you must knot this, secure it very, very tightly. That's it. Make sure that it won't pull through, and there you have your design on the paper. And that's how it looks at the back. You see how the quilting is actually taking place or taking shape on the back. Right, now we're very, very gently going to find the best place. Right, that's a do. And you're very carefully and slowly and gently going to pull the paper off. Now you need to pull the paper off, but leave the stitching inside or on the fabric. Now this is why you're not actually using tacking, you didn't actually use tacking stitches to sew this down, but just small running stitches, because tacking stitches wouldn't have held it. Because of the length of the stitches, it just wouldn't have held the paper. Now, as you can see, as the paper comes off, the stitches are left on the fabric, and you get a really good sharp outline of the design. Should have used a different colour really, shouldn't I? And you might have seen the stitches a bit better, but I'm trying to use up all my odds and ends of cotton. You know, all those little pieces of cotton that you gather and you rewind on a piece of card or an old cotton reel. I'm trying to use all those up. Got so much of it. Right, so we're pulling it out now, just coming to the end. So with one hand hold the fabric down firmly, while with the other hand you're pulling the paper. There you go. See what's going on at the back? Right, I'm tightening up some of the thread in the back, because if you notice, it's some of the stitches are just a bit loose. In fact, look at that one, that thread there. So it needs to be pulled through to the back, and then it will be secured. There you go, and that is the design on the front. And you can see the padding, you can see the quilting taking shape already. Different areas, raised areas. So back to the sketch for reference. I'll tear that page out and get rid of the book. So there we have the original sketch up against, you can just about make that out. You see how accurately that has come out on the fabric. It's all there. See, that's a marvellous way of transferring your design to anything that you're doing when you're working with fabric. Dressmaking, embroidery, as we're doing slow stitch quilting. Right, so there's my thread. Now I'm using quite a thick thread, and in some areas of this I've actually used 6 threads, the whole skein, because we're going through all these layers now of fabric for our slow stitch. We want a nice strong thread, so I've used 4 strands or 6. Now I'm going to start with the twine or the bine. I'm going to follow that all the way around in our nice little slow stitch running stitches. Now the needle I'm using is a favourite needle of mine. It's a long needle with a lovely point and a big eye, so it can take 3, 4, even more threads in that. And not only that, because it is a nice length, you can put your needle in and out like I'm doing here, and you can do that several times and get several stitches at one hit. So that slow stitch is taking shape already. That's the exciting thing about slow stitch and the stitches that you use. For example, the running stitch, it grows very quickly. It doesn't take long to produce an effect on your fabric almost immediately. So still carrying on. And this is the main stitch that we're going to be using. In fact, it's probably the only stitch that we'll be using. So off camera I will be carrying on all the way around the shape. Going to do the nice thick bind first, and I should put the leaves in last, but I just want to get the initial basic shape, the waviness of the ivy, how it flows. You might want to put your leaves in first, but for me I need to get a feeling of the flow all the way around there. So once again I'm going to carry on, and I'll get back to you after I've progressed a little bit further. So this is how far I got off screen. I've been round the whole shape of the design. I've done the twine or the bind 3 or 4 times, mostly 4 times, but sometimes 3 to give the contrast of thick and thin. I've also gone round the leaves as well. Now I've used some thread from the Hessian. I've removed several pieces of thread from the Hessian, threaded my needle, and it is quite difficult at times to work with this, especially through 3 layers. But if you can thread your needle and knot it, you do need a knot in your work when you're using this, and then come through. Now this is a nice Hessian because it has a gold twist in it, but it gives the effect, if you think of ivy vine, it gives the effect of that woody look. So it has given the work quite a nice realistic look in places, until you see the gold glinting and you think, well, that's not very naturalistic, but it hasn't got to be. It's artistic license, don't forget. So over here where I have used it, it's given a nice thick look, and also you can see the gold sparkling as well, or maybe not, but up close. Now this is as you know, this is the drawing, the sketch for reference, and you can see how it's taking, the sewing is actually taking shape now and resembling the actual sketch. So these are the veins. I'm just pointing out the veins here to show you. There we go. And I have started putting the veins in here. 2 rows to start with, 2 rows of slow stitch of the running stitch. A nice centre vein there. And then I should start putting in the smaller, the shorter, finer veins. Now I don't want this video to be too long. This is intended purely as a short video for people who are self-isolating. So a lot of this will be done off camera, so you're not sitting glued to the screen for longer than you have to be. Here I'm studying the veins to see which way they actually fall, whether they go down and they go up, and it depends entirely on how you look at it, whether you're holding it up or down. So I'm going to put the veins in pointing down towards the floor. So from the center stem they're going down. Once again, our favourite running stitch. The whole piece will be made with running stitch, speckling stitch, which is just solitary tiny stitches, a running stitch, just jumping about all over the place. No rhyme or reason to them. I shall also be adding some beads, a few French knots but not many, and a few sequins to give it a bit of a lift, to give it a dimension, if you like. They also, along with the beads and the French knots, will add some texture, because although this fabric, the red, looks textured, it isn't actually. It's quite smooth. So still putting in the veins there. And you see how quickly it just changes. Slow stitch, although it's called slow stitch, and that is more a mindful exercise, the slow being slowing down and living in the present. It is a process that grows quickly. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy, I think, there. I think that's the right word. I'll have to go away and look that up now. Make sure it is. So I am going to carry on with this off screen, and I'll get back to you maybe with the finished piece. So I'm going to carry on now with the veins, and see you soon. So here we have a reminder of what we started with, the beech leaf design and the slow stitching with the French knots. And then from our inspiration from design, which was the ivy, the sketch that will form the to form the basis of their design, and here is the finished design made up. I'll bring it up to the camera, but yes, you can see the beads and the sequins. The outline, I outlined the leaves with black thread to make them stand out a little bit from the red background. Unfortunately, the light is shining on there, but I think you have the idea. Now, the idea of the 8x9 fabric was to fold it like that to possibly make an evening bag, but I'm not sure yet, because I don't even think this piece is for me, it's for someone else. But there you go, that would be the idea of an evening bag. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it's helped to take your mind off things, and good health to you all. Take care.